Namaskaram and welcome to the day 2 of the Abhignana Shankaram series. Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavad Pada Shankaram Loka Shankaram. Yesterday we saw the Avataranam, the reason for the Avataram of the Acharya. Today we are going to take a glimpse of the contribution, immense contribution that the Acharya has done to Sanatana Dharma. As we saw yesterday, such an avataram or such an incarnation happens when there is a need to uplift the basic dharma, the Vaidika dharma, which is upholding, which is the substratum on which our entire civilization is. So when there is a decline seen in that is when an avataram comes. And as we saw, the essence of the entire Vedic dharma, which is the Upanishads, the Vedanta Jnana, the knowledge, supreme knowledge of the Brahman, to revive that is why the Acharya came. For that matter, even the avatar of Krishna, we believe it's for killing Kamsa, for killing Shishupala. Those are the stories from the Puranas. But if you really look at the line from the Bhagavad Gita, where the Lord says, Imam vivasvate yogam proktavanaham abhyayam vivasvan manave praha manuhu ikshvakave bravit evam parampara praptam rajarshayo viduhu sa kalena mahata yogo nashtah parantapa. That supreme yoga, that supreme knowledge of Brahman was given by me to the son Vivaswan, from him to Manu, and from there to Ikshvaku and all the lineage after that. But then over time it got destroyed. That knowledge got obsolete. The knowledge it just went out of normal practice. It became absent. So I have come here to revive that knowledge, O Arjuna, by giving it to you. I want to give again that knowledge to you now. So an avataram comes to revive that. And the Acharya's avataram was exactly for the same thing. We are not going to look at the life of the Acharya. This is well documented, as I mentioned yesterday, in the various lectures of Digvijayam, both by this humble self as well as by so many scholars who have given elaborate scholarly lectures and books on the Digvijayam. The biggest contribution of Acharya is at a time when the Vaidika Dharma had gone into decline, and hence the Vedanta, the knowledge of Vedanta, Upanishads was completely gone out of sight. The Acharya brought back. He brought back those Upanishadic works, those works of Vedanta, and wrote commentaries on all of them, which are called as Bhashya. He took primarily 10 Upanishads. Some even say it is 11 Upanishads, including the Shvetashvataram, for which also he wrote. There are a few other Upanishads for which also the Acharya has written Bhashyam. So, for example, the Narasimha Purvatapani, Uttaratapani Upanishad, etc. But primarily he took as authority, as major principal Upanishads, 10 Upanishads. Dasha Upanishad, Isha, Kena, Katha, Prashna, Mundaka, Mandukya, Tittiri or Taittiriya, Aitareya, Chandogya, and Brihadaranyaka. Because these Upanishads spoke of that supreme knowledge without a mention or a bias towards any sort of cult or tradition or Ishtadevata in them. Keeping these 10 Upanishads, the Acharya wrote elaborate commentaries and Bhashya to bring out the essence of those Upanishads and to say that all the Upanishads speak about that ultimate supreme called as Brahman. And they say that the Brahman is the only thing that is existing. There is nothing else. Brahma Satyam. Brahman alone is the truth. What we see around, what appears to us, what we perceive are all perceptions that are built on the substratum called Brahman. They are appearances and not, they don't have the same reality or truth that Brahman has. They are built on the substratum of Brahman, hence he referred to them as Mithya. Jagan Mithya, the thing that you see around the entire external universe is an appearance. And the individual who is analyzing this, who is introspecting this, finally realizes that the Brahman that is present everywhere and it is spread everywhere, pervaded everywhere, is nothing but the same Brahman, the same Atman, the same self that is enlivening this physical body as well. So the Brahman you see around is nothing but the Brahman or the Atman that is situated inside, at the heart, the cave of the heart inside. So this Jiva and Brahma are one. Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. So Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. This became the essence of what the Upanishads are saying, and this is what the Acharya established to say that this is exactly what the Upanishads are telling. That the Supreme is Brahman. The objective of our human pursuit is to know that Brahman, and when you know that Brahman, you understand that the Brahman is no dual, is not something outside of you, is not some different entity, but it is the same entity that is enlivening you, that you are nothing but that Brahman and you become one with that Brahman. To establish this essence is what the Acharya wrote commentaries, bhashyas on the 10 Upanishads and many more Upanishads. On the Brahma Sutra of Badarayana, which had synthesized all these Upanishads, he commented on them because there were so many commentaries already existing on the Upanishads with diverse viewpoints, on the Brahma Sutras with diverse viewpoints. So he wanted to establish that the Brahma Sutras and Upanishads are not speaking of different things, are not speaking of some different system. They are all speaking of Advaita. They are all speaking of the non-duality of the self with the Brahman. And this is what he established both from the Upanishads as well as the Brahma Sutras. The biggest contribution of the Acharya is to bring out the gem called Bhagavad Gita from the ocean called Mahabharata. So in Mahabharata, it's very easy that you can get lost in so many different directions, so many distractions on speaking of dharma and adharma and rajadharma and lokadharma and purusha dharma and stri dharma, so many things being spoken about. You can get lost in that ocean and you may not realize this gem that is spoken. Gems, I must say, that are spoken about, like Sanat Sujatiyam is another gem. The Bhagavad Gita is a gem. So the Acharya brought it out. The 700 odd shlokas, the verses of the Bhagavad Gita were culled out, literally carved out of the Mahabharata and separately presented with the Bhashya, with a commentary. That is the first time the world woke up to this gem and said, wow, we never even knew that this gem existed in the Mahabharata. So the Acharya is given the credit of bringing Bhagavad Gita to the fore and considering it par with all the Vedantic works of the Upanishads and the Brahma Sutras. So that is how the Prasthanatrayi came to be formed for the first time during the time of Acharya. Because we don't have any record of anybody else writing a bhashya on these three works together. People have written commentaries on the Upanishads before the Acharya. People have written commentaries on the Brahma Sutras before the Acharya. But nobody had spoken about or commented upon the Bhagavad Gita. So Acharya, for the first time, he brought all this together. Because at times the Upanishads and the Brahma Sutras can get a bit technical, can get a bit non-understandable by the common person. The Bhagavad Gita's language is much more simpler than these. So it becomes easier to communicate the message, and which is what Krishna did in the Bhagavad Gita. So Acharya brought all these three together. He called the Upanishads as the Shruti Prasthana, that is the proclamation of the Shrutis, the authority of the Shrutis, the Vedas. The Brahma Sutra as the Nyaya Prasthana, the proclamation of logic through logic and rational, proving that Brahman is the ultimate. And Bhagavad Gita as the Smriti Prasthana, the part of the Smritis, the part of translating what is mentioned in the Shrutis to the language of the common man. So this beautiful Prasthana Trayi then became a yardstick for anybody to be called an Acharya. It became essential that they have to write a Bhashya, especially in Vedanta. If you are a Vedanta Acharya, you have to write a Bhashya on all these three texts. Only then you will be given the term Acharya. This came to be formed after the time of Shankaracharya. So this was the biggest contribution of the Acharya to bring out this essence of this lost, as I mentioned, Krishna mentioning it to Arjuna, the lost knowledge. Though it is not lost, though it is there inherent in us, but we have forgotten it. We are no more seeing it. We are no more realizing it. So the Acharya brought it back and presented just in front of the people to say that this is what is your ultimate goal in life. This is the pursuit in life, and this is what you should go for. Now, coming to the other contributions of Acharya, he could have just stayed. This is something that he achieved quite early in his life. And he strode around the country. He walked around the entire Bharatavarsha, spreading this message of Advaita Vedanta. But as he traveled is when he realized that Advaita Vedanta is here. The supreme knowledge of the Upanishads is here. The Vedanta Jnana stands here. But are all people at that level to understand that? He realized it as he interacted with the people during his Digvijaya Yatra. That is when he realized that no, we can't give this knowledge to anyone and everyone, because everybody is not in the same maturity to understand it and grasp it and realize it. Those mumukshus, those jignasus, those really emancipated souls who are just on the verge of getting that upadesha from the guru, they get emancipated. But what about the rest, the huge majority of the society? That is when the other aspects of the contribution of the Acharya comes in the form of renovation of temples, in the form of reinstallation of deities. Some of the famous examples are that of Badrinath. When he visited the Kshetra of Badri, he found that the idol is missing. You just have a Salagrama that is being worshipped there. So he inquired with the elderly people in that place, and they said that because of invasions and because of intrusions coming from the north, they hid away the idol of Badri Narayana into the Narada Kunda. It was just thrown into the Narada Kunda. And it has been years now, and we don't even know where it is. So the Acharya goes in deep meditation, and he jumps into the Narada Kunda. In that state of trance, that state of meditative trance, he jumps into the Narada Kunda and comes out with the idol of Badri Narayana. The idol of Badri Narayana is a beautiful one. It is in the yoga. It's the Yoga Murti. It is seated in yoga, the yogic posture. He brings out that idol. That idol has got certain damages. So he sees whether he puts the idol back into the river and comes back again and tries to search it again. He gets the same idol 3 times. So he decides that this is the idol that is fit for Kali Yuga and fit for worship by devotees, and he consecrates that idol back into the shrine. So Badri stands at the Shikhara of Bharata Desha, and he reinstalls the idol of Badri Narayana. Same is the case with Puri Jagannath. Jagannath Puri, the Lord Jagannatha, again, when he visited, he just found that Shalagrama is being worshipped there because, again, because of different invasions and intrusions, they had hid away the idols of Bhadra, Balabhadra, Subhadra, and Jagannatha. They had buried them somewhere. And again, the elders did not know where it was. They knew that such a thing had happened, but they did not know. After that, nobody had. They attempted to search in different places, but they couldn't find. So again, the Acharya goes in trance, in meditative trance, and recovers the Brahmasat. You call it Brahmasat because if you look at the idols of Jagannatha, Balabhadra, and Subhadra, those wooden idols, huge idols, inside that is the life of the idol, of the Lord. Brahma Padartha, they call it. That Brahma Padartha is the life, and that is why you have Navakalebara, where the body keeps changing. You keep changing the body with the same Brahma Padartha. So the Brahma Padartha represents the life, the soul of the Lord. So the Brahma Padartha was there, whether the wood and other thing would have got withered away and would have got destroyed. So the Brahma Padartha was there, and for after many years it seems that the Navakalebara was done. When the Acharya recovered back the Brahma Padartha, again the idols were made around the Brahma Padartha, and the Navakalebara, the consecration ceremony was done. This is recorded by a few scholars, told to me by a few of my friends from Odisha, and I believe it's popular in the folk legend there. People still remember, or people still speak of this Navakalebara that happened during the visit of Acharya. And so many such stories that you find during the Digvijaya Yatra. So consecration of idols, reinstalling of the shrines, that builds again the faith in the Vaidika Dharma. Because everybody is at that level where they go to the temple, pray to the Lord, speak of their agonies, get solace, and come back. So at that level of the Bhakta, he needs a temple, he needs a shrine, he needs the Devata, Sanidhya. So those are important. Then the Acharya wrote so many stotras on different deities and different shrines. If you look at those stotras, it will speak about the different aspects of the deity, and towards the end, it will lead you towards Advaita Vedanta Jnana. That is the beauty of Acharya's stotras. It will speak of Panduranga, Mahayoga Pite Ate Bhimaratyam Varam Pundarikaya Datum Munindraihi Samagatya Tishtantam Anandagandam Parabrahmalingam Bhaje Pandurangam. He will bring the Parabrahmalinga. Up to there, he is speaking about the various physical aspects of Panduranga, and towards the end, he puts the colophon. He says Parabrahmalingam. This Panduranga, you may call him Krishna, Vishnu, all that is fine at one level. But if you go deeper enough, you find that it is Parabrahmam. It is that supreme Brahman alone, that Advaita Brahman alone, that is manifested here in the form of Panduranga. So he tried to bring that kind of a confluence, to take the sadhaka or the devotee or the individual from the lowest levels of devotion, of bhakti, the Kamya Bhakti, slowly moving them up the ladder, and end towards Advaita Vedanta Jnana. Even the Sadhana Panchakam, such a beautiful stotra of the Acharya, it starts with Vedo Nityam Adhiyatam Taduditam Karma Sunushthiyatam. All the scholars who vehemently protest and say that Adi Shankaracharya was against karma. We will speak about this more when we are trying to clear the misconceptions on day 4. But I will give a point of view already. He was against karma, only jnana. That is why he was a Prachanna Bauddha. He also, like the Bauddhas, they did away with Vedic rituals. Acharya also was vehemently against Vedic rituals. How is it possible? How can the Acharya do away with Vedic rituals? The Acharya only said that the rituals are not the end. The ritual is not the ultimate message of the Vedas. That is all he said. He said that the Vedanta Jnanam is the ultimate end. The ultimate message of the Vedas is to attain Brahman. Rituals is not the end. That is all he said. But did he not accept the rituals as a stepping stone, as a means of reaching there? Definitely yes. Why not? That is why the Sadhana Panchakam begins with Vedo Nityamadhiyatam Taduditam Karmaswanushthiyatam. Do the Swadhyaya of the Vedas every day, and whatever karmas are prescribed by the Vedas, do them regularly, do them properly every day. Teneshasya vidhiyatam apachadhi kamye matistijyatam. Then offer the fruits of that to the Lord. Because if you take the ego, if you take the acceptance of the fruits, then you are back into the world. So the only way for you to do Chitta Shuddhi, for you to help the karma attain Chitta Shuddhi, is by surrendering it to the feet of the Lord. So Acharya very clearly, he knew that these are all stepping stones. Especially when he interacted with the people, he knew that everybody is not at the same level. So everybody starts from different levels, and for them karma is important. That is why he undertook these activities of reinstalling of deities in the temples, composing of stotras and shlokas, the starting of the Panchayatana Puja, which is a very unique concept, especially among the Smartas. Panchayatana Puja, that is 5 deities together you worship. Shiva, Shakti, Vishnu, Vinayaka, Surya. In few cases, they also added the Skanda, so it became 6 deities. So this common worship he instituted because he didn't want people to have a feeling of hatred towards people following other deities or other traditions. Have all of them on the same platform and worship them, because ultimately everything is Brahman. This is just the Saguna, or the formful aspect of Brahman in different forms. So he instituted all these things because he knew that karma is essential for you to lead to Chitta Shuddhi. Because of your Purva Vasanas and impressions, you are not going to attain Jnana or realization of the Brahman just like that. You have to perform that karma with an indifference towards the fruits of action, towards its fruits. And that is what leads to Chitta Shuddhi, the purity of the mind, and finally makes you suitable for Vedanta Jnana. So these are all the different aspects that the Acharya touched upon, and not just these. Yoga, the Yoga Taravali, he speaks in detail about the different yogic practices. The tantric practices he speaks about in the Saundarya Lahari. The different aspects of Tantra, the Kundalini, the chakras. So there was nothing that was not known to the Acharya. He knew everything. And he knew that all of them, the only thing that he felt was that everything seems to be limited. It is having an end which is not the final end. So he tried to give a logical conclusion, logical end to everything that finally merges with the Nirguna Brahman, so that everything becomes a means to attain the Supreme Brahman. That is the biggest contribution of the Acharya. Had it not been for the Acharya, and that is why great Mahatmas and Maharshis have again and again proclaimed that Shankara Jayanti is one of the most important festivals to be celebrated even beyond Krishna Janmashtami or Ramanavami or any other festivals of the deities that we celebrate, because had it not been for the Acharya, we would not have been in a position to celebrate any of them. The Vaidika Dharma would have suffered such a heavy blow that the so-called Hindu that we call all of us today, we wouldn't have existed in this much of majority to be able to have the freedom to choose our deity and practice our dharma. So we owe all of this to that great Mahapurusha who walked, who strode this Bharatavarsha and helped revive, uplifted again the Sanatana Dharma, the Vaidika Dharma, so that it is available to us today. So with this, we conclude the session today. Tomorrow, we shall be looking at a bit more into the philosophy, Siddhanta of the Acharya. Until then, Namaskar.